We know that these are not fake papers. Right. When we look at these things, these came from an NSA employee, right? Provided to journalists who have won the Pulitzer Prize for public service, the highest journalism prize in the United States. They've been published in Europe. They've been published in the United States. They've been published in Japan. They've been published everywhere in the world. The United States government recognizes and accepts that these documents are authentic and true.
Authentic, okay.
How is it that the Japanese government says, oh, maybe the United States government doesn't know, maybe they're confused? Now, this is ridiculous, but this is an important lesson.
So this goes back to 2010, and he said exactly in the film, he says, the United States wanted us to tap the Japanese. The Japanese intelligence agencies refused to because of their laws or their ethics, and we tapped them anyway. And in the event that one day Japan would no longer be our ally, we inserted malware into their civilian infrastructure with the idea of lights out. That's the whole grid, the railroad system, communication system. He did not specify nuclear, and I don't know the implications of that on nuclear. I would imagine that might be handled differently, but that's just my assumption. And then he also says, not only in Japan, but he adds, as if it's all normal, he adds, we do this in Brazil, we do this in Mexico, we do this with countries in Europe. He didn't specify all of them. This is an amazing revelation of cyber warfare plans in 2010 area in Japan and elsewhere. And if you know, and you go back in your head, think about the links. The United States attacked Iran with malware. They tried in 2007, 8, 9, and they finally succeeded to some degree in 2010. They attacked Iran and destroyed the parts of the nuclear facility at their base in Iran. I don't remember the name. They had a meltdown of some of their vials, about 400 vials, and they were replaced and they were put back online 6 months later. But the secret was out. The secret got out. The United States, it's officially denied, but Michael Hayden made a couple of references to it with a bit of a smirk on his face, saying the United States takes care of its enemies, implying that Iran was an enemy and so forth. And he was very happy about the result. The Israelis and the Americans started that program. Stuxnet virus, S-T-U-X-N-E-T virus. It's an ugly, ugly story. You can find all the details out there. There's been written about. That virus escaped from Iran and went to other countries in the Middle East, and it was discovered the United States has now declared cyber warfare without declaring it. Wow, can you imagine everything that's going on now, everything that you can see, all this fake news we're getting out of America, that they're being attacked. You have to have some shred of doubt about what the United States tells you is going on in the world of cyber warfare, because we are the leaders in it. We attacked every country. We've heard about China hacking the United States for at the Office of Personnel Management and getting the names of so many employees and so forth, but they have not presented any evidence of anything else. And they've made wild accusations in the last few weeks without any basis of evidence. So this is a world that has come upon us that has Mr. Snowden brought our attention to, but we know so little of the surface of it. But it is a new form of warfare, just as important to me as the Americans dropping the atomic bomb in Japan in 1945. It's a declaration of a new kind of warfare. Very dangerous. On top of just the ordinary concept of surveillance of the entire world. Obviously, this is to me, by any legal definition, this is an act of war. The United States is not in alliance with Japan or any of these other countries. You are hostages, because if you ever expressed an interest to cut loose from an American alliance or go with another group, economic group, or with China, this, that, you would be subject to blackmail and this kind of hostage-taking situation. Very serious situation. I would like to speculate if a group of journalists, or even one journalist from Japan, were to get together and go to your ministry, to the Defense Department or whoever you think was appropriate, and ask them if they know anything about this situation, what would they say? They could say they don't know anything about it. Or two, very likely they might say they would deny it, because certainly the National Security Agency would deny it, because they never officially approved any of this movie. They said the movie was made up by a man who is not credited, is not rated as a substantial figure in the intelligence world. But we know that Snowden has actually given us a tremendous amount of information.
When we think about what's happened in the last several years around the world, with the rise of this new, untargeted, indiscriminate mass surveillance, we need to think about it not just in the personal context or what happens to us, because it's all too easy for people to say, there's nothing interesting about me, so I'm not afraid. A popular argument is, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. To say, you shouldn't worry about surveillance at all. You shouldn't think about surveillance at all, no matter how intrusive it is, no matter how abusive it is, because if you're an ordinary person, you'll be left alone. But it's important that we remember the origin of these arguments. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, is from Nazi propaganda in World War II. What matters is what's really happening. I found myself in a difficult situation where the government said telling the truth about what was going on behind this veil of secrecy and classified information would be to violate the law. No matter what the government was doing, no matter whether they were violating the rights of Americans or violating the rights of the Japanese, telling the world about this is a crime. And I would say, sometimes the only moral decision is to break the law. Legality and morality are two separate concepts. Again, it doesn't take long to think back to history and find a policy, a program, a decision, an event that was entirely legal. At the same time, it was entirely immoral. And I would ask you, ladies and gentlemen, and I would ask the public of Japan to make sure that your first allegiance is always to morality rather than legality. The law matters. We should support the law. We should defend the law, but only insofar as it serves the public, the people, and the future.